Hi, Andy here from builderhottub.com. In this video, we're going to look at everything that you need to think about when you're planning your own DIY hot tub for your backyard. Planning and preparation, super important for your DIY hot tub in your backyard. The planning stage is the most important stage. If you get something wrong here, it's going to impact later on. So what do I mean by planning? Well, there's a few things that you need to think about. Firstly, location. I'm lucky enough to have potentially several different places where I could have placed my hot tub. So I chose to actually reclaim an area of land that you can see behind me here that I was going to use in my garden for the hot tub. Are you going to have it in ground? Are you going to build it above ground? So this is a consideration because certainly in some states and in some townships, you need different planning regulations if you're going to have an in-ground tub versus an overground tub. So do check with your local planning department, as that will kind of impact how you're going to build your hot tub. How are you going to fill it? You've got to fill these things, and can you have you got water access? Can you get a hose pipe from the? I know we can all run 100 feet of hose and do it that way, but again, you've got to be mindful that you are going to need to top up the water from time to time as it evaporates. So you either need to plan to have a water source available or already have one. Where are you going to empty the tub to? So periodically you are going to need to empty that hot tub to change the water, just to keep it nice and fresh and clean. Where's that water going to go? Are you going to pump it out? Are you going to put it down the drain? You're not going to be watering your flowers with it. It's not going to go on your lawn. So you are going to need a way of disposing of that water, and of course disposing of it correctly. So that's a consideration that you need to think of. How big is your hot tub going to be? Now we'll actually talk about this in greater detail when it comes on to running costs and that kind of a thing, but the size is important. If you go too big, it's going to take way too long and it's going to cost you a fortune to heat up. If you go too small, then you've got the converse of not being able to get everybody in that if you want a 6-person tub but you make it too small so you can only get 4 in, it's that kind of thing. It's pretty logical. But the size is important because it's going to dictate the size of pump, because that's going to dictate how many jets you need. It's going to dictate what size filter you need, and obviously, as I said, it's going to dictate the running costs. So an extra meter or an extra couple of feet on the hot tub itself can add maybe 20% to the running cost and the heating of that tub. So it's something to bear in mind. What shape are you going to make the hot tub? Now, if you're going to build it out of a brick or cinder block or the thermoblocks, building something square or rectangular is so much easier than building a cylindrical tub. Now, a couple of my customers have built cylindrical tubs, but they've generally had the brickwork done by professional bricklayers. So I would suggest, for simplicity, that if you're going to do it, you do a square or a rectangle. It's so much easier. If you're new to bricklaying, as I was when I did mine, I chose to do it's almost a perfect square, but it's slightly rectangular in nature. But it was easier to do because cutting blocks perpendicular is so much easier than trying to lay a perfect curve. So shape, really important as well. How are you going to finish the hot tub and finish? I mean, on the surface itself. Are you looking to paint the surface? Are you going to use some of the epoxy sprays that you see being used for swimming pools? As I did, are you going to use tiles and swimming pool grout to give a nice tiled finish to your hot tub? All of these finishing methods you need to have a think about, because they also impact the waterproofing, and they also impact your budget. So if you're going to finish something with tiles, for example, it's going to cost a lot more than if you're using a painted surface. So if you're working to a budget, then you do need to cost out these kind of things. So you should be doing this at the planning stage of your tub. We've touched on size already, but how deep should your tub be? You know, are you looking for any kind of swim features to make it more of a swim spa than just a hot tub? These are things that you really want to get in at the planning stage rather than trying to fit them afterwards. It's so much easier if you start right at the beginning with the plan that you are going to move forward with. One of my favourites, just because I made a bit of a mess of it myself, was the control room. Now, I call it the control room. This is the area that's going to house your pump, your filter, a blower if you have one. The issue that I had with my build was I didn't allow enough space. So I kind of got the dimensions of the components off the various websites, and I kind of estimated the size that they were going to take. What I didn't account for was the size of the fittings. So the water pipe, for example, water pipe is 2-inch. The fittings, they're big, they're chunky, they're beautiful things to work with because they're so well made, but they take up space. So every time that you put in a joint or a 90-degree bend, it takes up space, and I didn't allow for that in my control room. So when you see the pictures of my control room, everything's kind of crammed in there, and it really doesn't look the best. And that's one of the biggest things that I've been able to help people with going forward was, you know, don't make the same mistake that I did. Leave enough space for all of those components. It's better to have more space than not enough. As in my case, it was not enough, so I ended up having to cram them in. They're at strange angles. If I could really go back and do it again, I'm sure I will at some point, redo the control room just to make it so much better and easier to fit those components in, you know, without obviously hindering the performance at all. How are you going to heat your hot tub? By that I mean, which method are you planning to use? So I went with electric. Electric, in my opinion, is the easiest to put in. In terms of running costs, you know, it's up there. It's not the cheapest. In terms of speed of heating, it's probably the slowest. So there's lots of different options that we need to consider here. So let's run through those options. So first is electric, as we've discussed. Second is propane or natural gas. Now, propane or natural gas, the benefits of this are it's super fast to heat up. These are by far the quickest way to heat your hot tub. So if you're looking for you know, a split-second morning decision that you want to go in later that day, you want a propane or a natural gas heated hot tub, and that will heat up super quick. The downside is you need a piped gas feed. If not, you need a tank somewhere in your backyard or your garden. Okay, so there are that downside to the propane gas route. Air source heat pumps, these are relatively new technology, but they do add a certain heating efficiency, and they can drop down the running costs of your hot tub up to around 30%, so I'm told. I don't have one myself, but quite a few of my customers have used these and plumbed these into their hot tubs. The way that these work is they sit in series with your spa pack or your electric heater that's going to be there, and they provide additional heat. You set the temperature on the air source heat pump a couple of degrees lower than on your electric spa pack. They have auto flow sensors built into them, so once the water is circulating through the heaters, it will kick in and you'll get that boost from the air source heat pump. It takes the heat from the air through the exchanger, pops it into the water, and then into your tub. A very simplistic way, and I will do a video on much more detail on air source heat pumps on the channel. Another option that you see out and about, certainly if you're Googling around, is wood fire. I really would not recommend a wood-fired hot tub that uses convection heating for a concrete build. You know, if you're going to use you know, these beautiful cedar round tubs, that kind of thing, you want to be totally off the grid, then that works. But if you're going to build an in-ground concrete tub, you're not going to want to use a wood fire as a medium of heating that tub. It's going to take too long, too much work, and it's pretty inefficient for something that size. Hot tub electrics. So this question always crops up from my customers is, you know, how much electricity do I need? What are the voltages? What's the current draw? So firstly, with anything electrical, you should definitely consult a qualified electrician. In terms of the supply, most hot tub components will run on 230 volts if you're in America, or 240 volts if you're in Europe. If you're in America, it's 230 volts and 60 hertz. If you're in Europe, it's 50 hertz. You can't take a motor that you found cheap, so a pump that you found cheap in Europe, and take that to America, or a pump that you've bought in America and bring it over to the UK. It doesn't work like that. You need to match the component that is rated for the electricity supply that you have. If you're in America, you may be thinking, well, hold on, I've got 110 or 115 volt supply into my home. How do I get that to 230? Well, you've actually got what's called a split system into your home. So you have two different supplies of 115 volts. So the way that it works is your electrician will combine those two supplies together to give you one of 230. Pretty simple, really, but again, you do need a qualified electrician to put that in place for you. In terms of the current that you're going to need, well, it really depends on all of the different components that you're going to use. So if you've got a heater, a pump, a blower, what you need to do is you need to add the running current for each one. So for a pump, you're going to look at the high speed, and it's going to be probably 12 to 15 amps that's going to need. You're going to need to add that to the amount of current that your blower will need, the amount of current that your heater will need, and that's going to give you an overall number, which again, depending on the components that you choose from, it's going to be around 40 to 45 amps. So what you're going to ask your electrician is, can you put me in a 50 amp breaker? And they will then wire in an electric breaker. So if more current than 50 amps is drawn on the circuit, the breaker will trip and it will protect all of the components. And you know, anybody that's in the tub, when there's an electrical failure or something like that, obviously you want to be sure that that's going to cut out. And that's why you're going to have an electrician do that for you. So you need to know all of the current draw, the amps that each of your components is going to need. You're going to add that together, and then you do need a little bit of headway on top of that number as well. And that's because when some of the components start up, they have a little spike in the supply, and you don't want, for example, when your pump kicks in, that your breaker trips off every time. So again, an electrician will be able to advise you on exactly what you need, but as a rough calculation, you need to add up all of those different values on your pump, your blower, your heater, add them all together. That will give you a number, and you're going to need probably 5 or 6 amps above that to give you the supply that you need. Now, when you're putting the supply itself into your garden, you're going to need an outdoor rotary breaker on that as well. Certainly over here in the UK, it's regulation that you have to have one within, I believe it's 2 meters. I'm sure somebody will correct me on this video in the chat if I'm wrong, of the tub, but you do need that circular breaker. It just isolates it completely. In the event that you need to go in and do some servicing, you can turn that breaker, cuts everything off, and just makes it really nice and safe to be able to do. But that is a requirement over here in the UK, and again, you should check with your local counties in the US if they require you to have one. I would definitely recommend one from a safety point of view, but also for servicing your tub. If you need to change anything in that control room, as I like to call it, you can just turn off the rotary breaker, and you know that you're totally safe. You're also going to need different wiring into your garden. So generally, I would say it needs to be 10mm squared cable, and that is capable of delivering the amount of current that you need to run the components. That cable, it should be armoured, so that you can't put a fork through it or a spade through it if you're digging. If you're attaching it to the wall, if it's in your garden, you should be using armoured cable, just so that in my case, I attach mine to the wall. I put armoured and a run all the way down the wall because I didn't want my young kids, driving their little cars and hitting the cable at all and taking chunks out of it. So again, it's just a safety thing that you really do want to put armoured cable with the correct breaker, and you're going to want that rotary switch as well for your supply. And all of that has got to be within the vicinity of your control room. So the placement of the control room, the supply of the electricity, and the placement of that rotary switch all should be done at your planning stage. Last two things that you should consider at the planning stage: audio-visual. Are you going to put any TVs, or are you going to put any speakers into your build? Running cables at time of build rather than having to pull everything up afterwards is definitely something that I would advise. So again, get that in at the planning stage. And lastly, are you going to cover the hot tub at all with any kind of enclosure or building? Again, this should be done at planning stage. Now, I definitely recommend drawing up some plans, so you've got something to work from. And this is something that I can certainly help you with if you're not able to do it yourself. A lot of my customers will sketch what they need. They'll sketch with some rough with some rough dimensions, and they'll just send them through. And one of the services that I do offer is being able to turn those into 3D CAD drawings. You can see some examples behind me now, and it just makes life so much easier. And this I can help you with on the plumbing side, and I'll mention that when we move into looking at plumbing shortly. If you've liked this video, please do like, share, and subscribe to the channel. See you on the next video.